So this video is basically a compilation of all of my videos covering the now redrawn chapters of One Punch Man, and these chapters cover the majority of the Ninja Village arc, so from chapter 195 to 202, and I thought it would be quite fun to put all of the retcons so far in one video for reference purposes. It's also strange to think that this arc began when I was first starting out on YouTube, so the first few chapters in this arc have a very unconfident voiceover from me, but you can hear and see me gradually get better and more confident with my voice as well as my editing getting better. To me, it's like a mini time capsule, and I really hope you guys enjoy this video. Please consider subscribing as well. I really want to make this a full-time gig, but I'm still far away from earning on YouTube, so any support is appreciated. The first chapter I delve into also has a quick recap, so you shouldn't feel too lost, but with that out of the way, I hope you enjoy. So we got a new chapter of One Punch Man, and this one came out surprisingly soon. It wasn't long since the previous one dropped, and I had to scramble to get the script going. It's much shorter than the previous one, but this chapter holds some key details that we need to cover, especially about the Ninja Village arc. And of course, we are going to get into some theories and discussions at the end. But quickly going over the previous chapter, we see this sparring match between Saitama and Flashy Flash, and Saitama clearly won, even though Flashy Flash postponed it. Genos alerts them of a monster alarm, and the heroes meet in E-City with the monsters, where Sonic, Wind and Flame all appear. Information about Flash and Sonic is revealed, and that there is a cube in the Ninja Village. With Sonic, Wind and Flame and the other monsters at the scene defeated, Saitama asks King in catching Monako, and with great effort they find the little monster. Monako can't provide any information, so they go to Sitch in search of Blast and find him already there. This brings us into this next chapter called Tenino. We start off with Speeder Sound Sonic in an abandoned building tend to his beaten head, and he calls out to those hiding. Wind and Flame both appear from the ceiling, dropping down and remarking at Sonic's perception. They prepare to attack Sonic, but are suddenly pounded from behind, becoming immediately incapacitated. The two attackers call them Jokers and reveal that they have been ordered to keep an eye on Sonic and Flash. They greet Sonic, and we learn that they are part of the Ninja Village graduation classes, and as they reveal their names and graduation class numbers, more pop out from their hiding spots, giving away just how many were spying on Sonic, which Sonic embarrassingly remarks about. All the ninjas gather together and reveal themselves to be the heavenly ninja party called Tenino. They are an elite assassination team comprised of those who have surpassed the rank Jonin, meaning highest ninja, and becoming Tenin, which means heavenly ninja. Sonic thinks to himself that they all mean business, and asks if the ninjas could just get off his back. With their faces pressed down onto the floor, Wind and Flame jokingly mention that the ninjas capturing them need numbers to have an advantage. The captors become very angry and are implied to have killed them with a scream as we swap to Sonic thinking. Sonic observes that they weren't allowed to socialize at the village and is surprised at the group of graduates. The ninjas reply to this observation, and they state that ever since the village was destroyed, they changed their ways, and they've been preparing for a plan behind closed doors. It's revealed that the time has come, and that man has awakened. Sonic is surprised, and the ninjas continue. That man was the founder of the Ninja Village, and that people have called him the most powerful ninja in history. He lost consciousness after a battle with Blaz 15 years ago and was recovering in a capsule since. With that man now awake, they can go kill Flashy Flash and then move on to Blast. And after that, no one will be able to stop them taking over the world. They reveal that their plan is to use Sonic to call Flash to a specific location where they will ambush him. They declare that that man will also be there. We then switch scenes to the Hero Association in Sitch's office, where the association is experimenting on separating the monster cell from the human host, and that Blast is watching it. Blast states that they want to learn the key to undoing monsterification. Sitch mentions Monako being there, and Flash jumps in, saying that Saitama and Monako both touched God with Flash and he brought them as samples. To which Saitama and Monako both jokingly hold hands, shouting "precious" behind him. A researcher announces they are starting the experiment, and we see two monsterized humans getting zapped by a machine while strapped down. Saitama notices that they are both from the martial arts tournament, which is more surprising that Saitama actually remembers them. The experiment turns critical and Sitch calls for it to be shut down. The two monsters fall to the ground, frothing at the mouth, and Minako nervously backs away and shouts that she was never human to begin with, so there's no point in experimenting on her. Saitama says they won't, but asks how she was born, and Minako reveals that she was in fact a piece of Lord Gyoro that got separated during its incubation by Psychos. Saitama asks if it was hunger that made her separate, but Minako says she thinks it's the conscience. Which I'm not too sure what this could be entirely suggesting. It is clearly a small gag, but I think it means a part of Gyoro gained consciousness and then split off, which turned out to be Minako. And since Gyoro was just a puppet, Minako could have any number of potential personalities, so I do hope she stays good. Then the bear tournamentee called Hamokichi seems to get back up and strap himself onto the table of his own accord. Hamokichi then explains that there is no way he could look at the kids at the dojo after turning himself into a monster and plead for them to run the experiment again. With the experiment turned back on now, this time the numbers have stabilized and the researcher says that this is promising. Blast then comments that their psychological state is the key. The experiment then takes a break and Flash gets back to the matter at hand immediately and asks Blast about God. The chapter then seems to abruptly end there, with the last question posed by Flash being that Blast knows about the connection between God and the ninja village. And I was very confused at it ending right there, and I even had to go to a few different websites in order to see if a page was missing. But no, it definitely ends there, and it's one of the more shorter chapters. But even though it is short, we do learn a lot of things, both connected to the webcomic and not. This whole chapter is about setting up the events of the Ninja Village arc, where Saitama meets the head of the village, also known as that man. But this time we also get the hidden connection between God and the Ninja Village, further foreshadowing that conflict and raising the stakes. We also get a few non-webcomic things like reversing the effects of monsterization during this arc, and finally the reveal of where Minako came from, which could mean she's a key player in the stories to come and an important character due to her creation and link to Psychos. But this is only speculation and we'll have to wait for more hints. Alright, we have finally got another new chapter of One Punch Man here today, and we are now officially within the Ninja Village arc. So get ready for exciting new twists and turns. The story will push Saitama to go down. This chapter reveals so much more information, so be sure to watch the whole video. And this brings us to the recent chapter 196 of One Punch Man. It starts off back at the Hero Association building with our group we had left off previously. Flash continues to ask Blast if he knows something about the connection between God and the Ninja Village, but Blast stares at him with an almost menacing look, as if Flash shouldn't have asked that question. Minako chimes in questioning the situation, and Saitama remembers that the ninjas said something about that village previously. Flash then bluntly asks Blast if he was the one who destroyed the village, surprising Minako and Saitama, and Sitch hangs his head low, indicating he already knew the answer. And then sitting down on the bench, Blast says that he wouldn't blame him for holding a grudge, to which Flash responds that he was quite relieved. Blast then states that he's surprised Flash took so long to realize, and he must have repressed those memories. Saitama is still obviously confused about the situation. Flash soon reveals that he was raised in the Ninja Village, which was a training facility for assassins, and that it was located deep in the mountains, inaccessible due to a barrier placed by the founder, who's also known as that man. He continues and states that 9 years ago, soon after he had left the village, it was destroyed by someone, but he had no interest in who since he had abandoned it long ago. However, one thing did bother him. But god damn! Flash, don't ever let me catch you lacking. Murata just loves drawing Flashy Flash in extreme detail. Anyway, back to the story. Flash then makes a reference to that great fourth wall break back in chapter 194, saying that in those 3 panels that Saitama and King were catching Minako, he went back to check on the village to investigate what was bothering him. Whew, now the fourth wall breaking is extending to more characters other than Saitama. This is going to do wonders for power scaling. Saitama then sarcastically compliments his speed and Minako praises him for not getting lost, to which he responds with "shut up." I think these 3 character dynamics are becoming my absolute favourite in the story so far. Originally it was Saitama and Genos who were my favourite, but Minako just bounces so well off of Saitama's personality and they mirror each other amazingly. The scene then switches to a flashy flashback. See what I did there? And he stares up at the village and,
Stop showing me pictures of gay black dudes kissing! Stop it! It's turning me on!
And he stares up at the ruined and destroyed village where we see large circular chunks gouged out of the building. He climbs down the large stairwell into the basement and walks through some holes that's been taken out of a huge door to where the cube used to sit but also disappeared. He immediately remembers when him and Sonic saw it in the past. We return to the present and Flash states that as soon as he saw the circular chunks carved out of the building, he immediately knew who it was and then asks if Blast did it to recover the cube. But Blast doesn't answer and Flash continues. He says thanks to Wind and Flame he was able to connect the dots and that the facility was modelled after the cube hidden in its depths. We return to a short flashback where we see a young Flash and Sonic looking at none other than the village founder, or that man, sleeping in a recovery capsule, and says that he barely looked human. Flash again asks if it's safe to assume he was given powers by God, similar to that of Homeless Emperor and Garrow. Blast then finally reveals that the man used to be his partner, and that they hunted cubes together. This uncovers that this guy, mentioned all the way back in chapter 173, was Blast's partner before founding the ninja village. And his name is Empty Void, the strongest ninja in the world. However, he somehow monsterized and forbade everyone from using his name, becoming only known as that man. This has some big connections with 173 that I mentioned, because in that chapter, Blast was contacted by God but refused, which was 20 years ago. Then partnered up with Empty Void to take on God, but somewhere between then and their battle 15 years ago, so within those 5 years, he must have been contacted by God himself and accepted the deal, ending up stealing a cube for himself. It's not specifically stated, but I believe he created the ninja village in order to protect the cube and create an army for God, who seems to have attempted this strategy a number of times. Moving on though, we get another hilarious moment where Saitama and Monako mistake Empty Void's name for being Boiled Man, and even the phrase in context could mean a fractured broken bone, as Monako states whilst reading a sudden dictionary. This moment would definitely be better if I knew a little more Japanese, but nonetheless it's still a great moment. Blast then reveals that Empty Void is the only person with the ability to open the gate of the Celestial Rock Cave, which connects to the dimension where God hides. He also states that the reason why he's been searching for a way to undo monsterization is so he can use it on Empty Void and gain access to that dimension again. Suddenly, a woman comes into the room saying they just received a letter addressed to Flashy Flash. Picking up the letter, he states that it's a letter of challenge, and we find out that it's from Sonic. It says, "That man has awakened. He's after your head, running will do you no good. It's time to settle the score, come to my hideout, I await you alone at the place where childish dreams are seen." Which I thought was gonna be a poem, but I was pretty disappointed. Blast takes notice of the "that man has awakened" bit, and Sitch comments that it's fortuitous timing. Blast is then reminded of the past, saying it's been 15 years since Empty Void escaped from their battle, saying he could have recovered and has been waiting for the right chance to come back. Flash thinks to himself how Blast couldn't deliver the final blow and calls him a softie in his own head. While Saitama remarks how there's no way Sonic's handwriting is this good, but Flash confirms that it is in fact his handwriting, and Saitama gets offended that the letter of the challenge he got was scribbled. Flash then muses over the final passage of the letter, and he says that it appears Sonic has fallen under that man's control, and was probably forced to write this to lure him out. Which is, well, exactly right. I mean, well done Flash. You're not an S-class hero for nothing, it seems. Flash then tells Blast that this opportunity is the perfect chance to redeem himself for letting Empty Void go in the first place, and the scene switches to outside the Hero Association. He then tells Blast that he needs to take care of something and to head to the hideout before him. Blast surprisingly agrees, but questions if the address on the back of the letter is correct, and Monako comments on how dumb the ninjas are for doing that. He then asks Saitama if he's coming too, and Saitama agrees, saying he has nothing better to do. They then head off in a black hole, leaving Flash behind. Flash pauses before speeding off down the highway, thinking about the location him and Sonic went to as kids. We then move into a flashback and see both Sonic and Flash sitting in front of a fire alongside the body of a monster. Young Sonic expresses that Flash's memories of the outside before he was forced to join the village helps him stay in a good state of mind. However, Sonic was born in the Institute, forced to be a part of the training from the very beginning. He continues saying to Flash that he has a powerful soul, which means the instructors can't control him and he won't slip into being just a cog in the machine. He then reveals he has a dream for the future, that he's going to climb to the top of management and take over the village, that he'll tear down the system and create a free environment for orphans like them. Sonic then says that the assassination techniques are useless and what has true value is living life as they please. He then asks Flash for help in doing this, saying that Flash's eyes are a lot like his own, and that he's even decided on a potential spot for the new village, and Flash and Sonic both look at the map gleefully. The scene changes from the topography of the map to the mountains that Sonic was pointing at, and in that exact spot, Flash meets Sonic in a pile of rubbish. They greet each other quickly and a small smile appears on Sonic's face in regards to Flash remembering their childhood. He goes on to say that after opening up a road on the mountain, people found it a convenient way to dump their stuff, and then states it's the perfect setting for the end of a ridiculous dream. The chapter ends here as they draw their swords and face each other, and the title of the chapter is then revealed being The Place Where Dreams End. And what a fantastic chapter! I mean, there wasn't a lot of action, but I doubt anybody really expected any. This was a great middling chapter that is setting up the conflict that takes place nearing the end of the Ninja Village arc. And I'm loving Blast's integration as well into the story. It does feel very natural, even if it differs from the webcomic.
And am I happy that Blast actually stayed silent for most of the chapter. And so he's not just a character that's meant to give massive exposition dumps just to push the plot forwards, but he's feeding us just enough information for us to know a little more about him, but not enough to ruin the air of mystery that surrounds him. Which is perfect and tells me that the way Murata is writing him means that his character is in safe hands. I also noticed that Blast said God is hiding in the other dimension, and this is way more important than I think most people believe. A lot of people originally thought that maybe something is tethering God to that dimension, and it was decisive if God was either in that dimension willingly or against his will. But Blast's statement leans more to the former, so God could have decided to hide there due to something or someone getting in his way in the past, and now he can only siphon his power in the main dimension through humans like Homeless Emperor, Garrow, and now maybe Empty Void. It also must be a very hidden away dimension that not even Blast can access with his black holes and everything, and only one super powerful being can do so. This could be similar to Phoenix Man's Phoenix Space, in which he only has access to it, but if it's anything like that, then Saitama can just punch through it with his crazy power he has. This is awesome exposition, and I hope it gets explored more in the future. But my theory for future chapters comes with some intense spoilers for the webcomic, so if you don't want to hear it, this is your major spoiler warning. Skip to this timestamp on the screen to avoid it. And now, getting into it, I believe that once Empty Void is defeated by Saitama at the end of the Ninja Village arc, Blast and Sitch could grab his unconscious body and keep it in the Hero Association building. And then, whilst the next few arcs are progressing, they will be trying to find a way to undo his monsterization. And once he's unmonsterized, our heroes will have a way to access the dimension for the future showdown with God. It might not pan out this way, but with the evidence we've got, I think it is very possible. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Overall, this chapter was incredible, and I'm just so excited to continue it. If I could guess, we're about 5 to 6 chapters away from the end of this arc. Then we have another small one and the really big one after that.
Right, we are back with another chapter of One Punch Man, and this one is a little short for a One Punch Man chapter, but it does show the full-scale battle between Sonic and Flashy Flash, continuing on from when they met in the last chapter at the rubbish pile. In this chapter, we get some really awesome character moments and backstories for these characters, as well as how Saitama has influenced them both. So be sure to stick to the end to find out what happens. Now, getting straight into this new chapter 197 called Duel, and the front cover page includes an awesome drawing of Sonic and Flash both clashing. It starts off with Flash asking Sonic why he challenged him, and Sonic responds that it had slipped his mind, but he always wanted to settle the score and poises ready to attack. Flash poses in almost the exact same way, hinting at their deep-rooted history and similarities between each other. Flash then taunts him, saying that there's an obvious outcome and the assassination business must give him a lot of free time. And Sonic responds for him not to get cocky, and he's the one who taught Flash how to use a sword. We then flash back, okay, those jokes are going to stop now, to where a young Sonic first meets a young Flash, asking if he's stuck in a particular squad called Squad 5, and offers to give him some tips on how to use blades. He introduces himself with his ninja call sign, and Flash does the same, but also states that if they, presumably the higher ups at the village, find out that they're talking, they'll be in big trouble. He also says that Sonic is also in Squad 5 with Flash, but Sonic just blows him off, stating they just don't get his genius. We then learn that Squad 5 is considered to be the squad of failures, and Sonic was in there because he rebelled a lot, but also offered Flash advice even when there was nothing in it for him. They practice fighting, and Flash thinks back that Sonic was the only person he had to talk to. As they become friends, we learn that a day in the ninja village would last 72 hours with only 6 for sleeping. The food was bland as well, as the outside world completely blocked off. They spent every day becoming living weapons, training just to kill people, and weren't allowed to display any type of emotions. Those with dead emotions were considered top performers, which is an ironic rule as we see Sonic and Flash train together and seemingly enjoy each other's company. The scene then switches back to the present day as Flash and Sonic clash, trading blows together and exploding apart with a ton of force. Sonic throws projectiles at Flash and suddenly rushes forward, darting behind him and throwing more to trap Flash in a pincer. Flash, however, easily jumps out of the way as the projectiles explode beneath him. Suddenly, Sonic uses his special move, 10 Shadows Funeral, creating multiple after images, and then using Windblade Kick to strike him all at once. Flash spots where Sonic will be at that moment and parries his kick, then uses his ultimate technique as a counter. His Flash kicks land, kicking Sonic away into the rubble. Flash lands back on the ground and seemingly surprised, he expresses that he never thought he'd have to use his ultimate techniques on Sonic, and then beams happily, complimenting Sonic's strength, saying, "The way you are now, we could..." But just as he's about to finish, several projectiles rush in from all angles, landing in a massive heap. But Flash had skillfully dodged out of the way and asks who the now emerging figures are. It turns out to be the Heavenly Ninja Party Tenino, who were lying in wait just like they said they would in chapter 195. But they complained to Sonic that this was not the time of the designated place, that he was supposed to lure Flash out, and that they were right to doubt him from the very start. They point their weapons at Flash and announce it's time to start the execution of the traitor Flashy Flash. Suddenly, behind them, one of the members of Tenino gets thrown, crashing through the rubble, then shouts at a figure who threw him. It turns out to be Sonic, who dusts himself off, and the members scream, asking if he's completely turned on them, which, well, I mean, he was never on their side to begin with. Flash is then even more surprised that Sonic defended against his Flash kicks. And Sonic then scoffs, stating he wanted to take down Flash himself rather than hand him over to the Ninja Party, and they just had to go and interrupt their duel. He continues that this is a matter between him and Flash and the ninjas need to stay out of it. He taunts them further, mentioning that their upperclassmen act pisses him off and he never wants to see them again. The Ninja Party is furious now and threatens to execute both Flash and Sonic. They confidently express that every one of them is a powerful ninja, and both Sonic and Flash have no idea how pointless it would be to take all of them on. Sonic then stares at them sinisterly, and his constant competitiveness with Saitama has influenced the way he thinks about enemies under him. They're all so tiny, smaller than grains of sand compared to Saitama and Sonic's goal of defeating him. And we get this amazing shot of Saitama absolutely engulfing the ninjas, showing you just how far Sonic's goal is compared to the strength of the enemies in front of him.
Flash again praises him, saying he must have done a lot of training. Sonic lands next to him and responds that Flash is only alive because they got interrupted. And then Flash jokingly says Sonic runs his mouth a lot, and the final panel of the chapter shows Sonic and Flash together, prepared to absolutely destroy the Heavenly Ninja Party. Now, like I said in the beginning, the chapter does feel a lot shorter than most, and I have to say, after Sonic's many fights with Saitama and Flash's fights with Garrow and Platinum S at the end of the Monster Association arc, I was kind of underwhelmed by the fighting in this chapter. I mean, yeah, Sonic has gotten stronger, but the fight we see and how short it is doesn't really prove that to Flash. He was just fast, and Flash praised him quite quickly. Maybe in the story, Flash was more desperate to get Sonic on his side than we thought. He did say something like, "The way you are now, we could," before he was cut off. And this could be Flash wanting to continue and destroy the village with Sonic alongside him, or something more personal. Maybe he likes Sonic's new strength?
Can we get much higher?
But it's purposely made to be ambiguous, so it could be something completely different. And we're not far off some very important future events from the webcomic. I think we have another chapter where Sonic and Flash take on the Heavenly Ninja Party, and then we get into the real important stuff. And I'm really excited to see how Blast and Saitama work together. I want to see them team up or have a nice conversation with each other, and I think it'll add so much to this arc before he eventually disappears again.
One Punch Man chapter 298 called Habit starts off with Sonic and Flash facing off against the Heavenly Ninja Party that appeared in the last chapter. And we had learned that Sonic didn't follow their instructions, so now the party has turned on both Sonic and Flash, who have decided to work together for the time being. Now, getting into it, whilst looking down at the Heavenly Ninja Party, Flash asks Sonic if they are underlings of that man, and Sonic responds confirming this and says even though that the village is gone, these people are still willing to serve under him. One of the party leaders gives instructions to Wind and Flame, who turn out to still be alive even after seemingly getting off-screen just a few chapters ago. The ninja party basically asks them to rush in and attack them first, which Wind and Flame begrudgingly accepts, realizing that they'll just be attacked as well alongside Sonic and Flash. And I don't know why they're sweating all scared, since they're meant to be powerful monsters, and they've been made to flip-flop between really weak to really strong in the latest string of chapters, which is kind of throwing me about Murata. Flash whispers to Sonic, stating that they'll lead them all to attack at once, since they should be awful at working together due to their independent style of training in the village, leading them to just get in the way of each other. Sonic retorts that he doesn't need to be told that, but before he can finish, the ninja party immediately goes on the offensive, and both Sonic and Flash dash away themselves, and Sonic thinks to himself that at the village they were taught when facing multiple targets, they should go for the weakest one first and work their way up, which leads him to believing that they'll attack Flash first, and since it can't be helped, he'll have to cover him. But to his delusional surprise, the ninja party all immediately jump to fight Sonic, surrounding him on all sides. And they attack, and Sonic is left defending himself, flustered and complaining that they're all tunnel visioned. And while this is happening, Wind and Flame prepare their string-like attack and surround Flash with their special move, which surprises the ninja party since they're also not following their instructions. And this is actually a high IQ play from Wind and Flame, since by deviating from the villagers' teachings and aiming for Flash, they've avoided getting minced up by the ninja party if they attack Sonic. And they've also surrounded Flash with poisonous wire, stopping him from moving too much. They are going to use this opportunity to escape the Heavenly Ninja Party, who are distracted, getting in each other's way trying to fight Sonic. But much to their dismay, Flash just darts underneath the wire by going through the ground and immediately using their own wire to tie Wind and Flame up by smashing them into the floor. Sonic suddenly gets attacked from behind and something seemingly happens. His eyes go bloodshot and I can't tell if he's scared, about to get beat, or it's as if he's monsterizing or about to change forms. But just as Sonic might do something, Flash comes in and saves him, kicking the ninja party away. And with his veins popping and nose bleeding for some reason, he shouts at Flash not to get in his way, but Flash, being as cool as ever, just reiterates that Sonic was the one who said that they should work together. They then start fluidly working together as if they've been doing this forever, jumping over each other, covering both of their blind spots, easily taking down the ninjas. Even a few of the party members comment on their perfect harmony, and it's as if they've been training together for a long time. Now, Wind and Flame, still bound up, struggle to escape, and Flash reminds them that if they get cut a little bit by the wire, they'll die. And Sonic asks why he doesn't just finish them off, but Flash explains that since they are monsters, he thinks that they could be valuable samples in order to find a way to revert monsterization, and that if all goes well, maybe the ninja boss, or that man, will open his eyes and the whole picture would change. They ask him what he's talking about, and he continues that you idiots still don't realize. And just before he finishes his sentence, the chapter ends there, and unfortunately we don't get any more information. It is a very sudden cliffhanger, but there's a few reasons for Murata's later chapters being this way. He's got a ton of side projects at the moment, including the indie anime he's been making called Zayuki, it being Christmas as well, and a lot of national holidays in Japan, as well as a special project he's working on, which I will cover in a separate video. So hopefully when his schedule clears up, we can get some nicer, longer chapters. Chapter 199 of One Punch Man, called That's Right, starts off with Sonic and Flash with their backs together as they're surrounded by the Heavenly Ninja Party. The group are confused at what Flash had said since the last chapter, which was that the boss will open his eyes, and that's in terms of demonsterization. They then ask Flash what he's talking about and comment that he must have realized how powerful they all are and decide to confuse them all instead. And one of the stronger group members, who I discovered is called Brawny Muscle after looking at the Wikipedia, and if knowing the name of every character is important to you guys, then I gotcha. Now, Brawny Muscle picks up a ton of loose debris in his arms while shouting that he doesn't understand Flash's backmarker mentality, and that if he wants to confuse someone, then this is how you do it, as he throws the rubble in the air above the ongoing battle. After throwing the debris, he shouts, "Stone debris release," and the other members of the ninja party get ready and jump into action, now speedily bouncing off of the rocks in all directions above Flash and Sonic. And normally this would be impressive, but it's such an itty bitty size compared to what Saitama did against Garo and Titan. And now for Flash and the viewers, it's just like someone embarrassingly trying to show off their skills, but it's incredibly underwhelming. Although both Wind and Flame do seem to be impressed, stating that it's a three-dimensional attack using flying debris as footing, and also stating only Elite Ninja Master can use it since it's the most difficult technique in the village. And this is the most difficult technique in the village? This? But that's beside the point. While Sonic and Flash both seem to be hit by the ninja party's attacks simultaneously, Sonic calls the move poorly coordinated, and Flash just states it's such an old tactic. Just then, Flash seems to crouch down, breaking apart the ground beneath him, and then he jumps, flying up into the debris in the sky, breaking most of it apart. He aims for one particular guy who... Wait, let me check the Wikipedia. Vibrating Tremor, who can do nothing but look on in surprise as his vibrating plug has knocked the Flash out of him. The rest of the ninja party and even Sonic is surprised as Flash continues to jump around the debris, breaking each one he lands on apart so they can be no longer used, and knocking out any remaining ninjas that are unlucky enough to be in Flash's way. Brawny Muscle is left in awe at the sight, stating that Flash is blocking their movements by crushing their foothold. And hey, I just explained that. He goes on to call Flash an insult, but before he can finish, Flash lunges at him, and Brawny, along with a few other strong ninja members, throw rocks to protect themselves. But Flash just waves between them, using them as footholds. He screams, asking how Flash is moving like this, but is kicked away in a quick, clean motion, landing hard on the floor. Flash backflips away and everyone is left stunned into silence as he lands back on the floor, sheathing his sword while the carnage he created comes crashing down behind him, in this classic but incredible anime finishing move style. The sword clips fully into his sheath and he calls them all morons, stating that you don't need to learn this in the village. If you're strong enough, then it will be easy to think of something as simple as this. And yeah, you tell him, Flash, I completely agree. Sonic scrunches his fist together and reflects on what he just saw, and what he considers to be the ultimate specs in being strong through speed stands before him. And angered by this, he refuses to acknowledge Flash, calling him a bastard and asks how much he trained. But Flash responds questioning Sonic. He didn't train, his improvements in strength all come from continual combat experience. But he does say one thing: Sonic cannot become stronger until he throws away his worthless pride, and he's reminded of his fight with Platinum S. Sonic grumbles quietly, but walks up to Flash and stands next to him, saying that's right, even though he's bleeding from both nostrils in frustration. Sonic tells him to shut up and says it's just a frontal wound.
Aside, worthy adversary, 'tis but a scratch.
But Flash notices Sonic is still trembling and looks at him and comments that it looks like he's still growing. Sonic, however, calls him conceited out of his more frustration, telling him not to get carried away just because his skills have improved a bit. And now Wind and Flame watch from a distance, thinking to themselves that it's quite rich of them to comment on others' pride. And the chapter ends there after that little bout they all had, and the Heavenly Ninja Party is pretty much defeated now, and Flash has shown his strength quite a bit, which would make them all think twice about continuing the fight. It is another pretty short chapter, but we can tell the fight is reaching its conclusion, which I am so excited to see. Chapter 200 of One Punch Man, called Blessed, starts off with Brawny Muscle from the previous chapter lying in the rubble coughing up blood and asking why Flash didn't finish him off since he could have easily lopped off his head. But Flash responds saying that even the smallest of insects have souls, and that he figured he'd at least hear the truth about the village before they all die, to which Sonic seems confused and surprised at the sudden topic being brought up. We then get this lovely backdrop of the scene surrounding them, which is meant to symbolize the intermission where Flash tells him the whole story about God and its connection to the village, where both Sonic and the Ninja Party are left stunned at the tale, confused on what this God exactly is. Flash reiterates that yes, they believe the village was a testing ground for creating minions of God similar to that man. He continues saying that taking away the ninjas' humanity and training them to their limits was all part of this process. He asks Sonic if he remembers what he saw in the underground as well, and states that the cube was used to test the ninja's suitability in becoming a minion of God. We are then shown a flashback of the cube where piled up next to it is the remains of skeletons crumbled up in the corner, and as Flash says if they're not suitable, their life is then forfeit. While the rest of the village and ex-village ninjas are stunned into silence, Flash continues. The village, being just a training facility for assassins, was a facade, and in brutal fact, those who were shipped out as assassins of the village were in fact failures from that man's perspective. He then calls them all foolish and believing the villagers lie, saying they haven't accomplished anything and that they instead just had their lives stolen from them. Sonic asks if this is all true, but Flash interrupts saying if they don't believe him, just ask Blast, who is around for a sudden change. Suddenly, one of the ninjas starts to laugh, then more of them, and then all of them, wildly laughing in front of Sonic and Flash. One of the members called... Violent Force starts to speak up. He says it's presumptuous to assume that they weren't in fact offered. He asks Flash if he has grown dissatisfied with living his own life in defiance of the village, and complains he doesn't understand how dropouts think. They all maliciously glare at our two heroes, stating that only fulfilling the duties given to them will allow them to find their final resting place. It doesn't matter who the master is they serve, since they have a duty as sworn ninjas. The Heavenly Ninjas are blessed. The chatter continues and they chant between them the word blessed. Flash is silent. Sonic then resorts to killing them since they're beyond help, and Wind and Flame call them robots. Suddenly, Violent Force's face starts to bulge and blood shoots out from his nose and mouth. It starts to happen to the rest of the ninjas as well, and their bodies spasm and contort. Flash and Sonic ask what's going on, and Violent Force starts to utter that man is finally arriving. While Sonic and Flash are left in shock, he continues saying that no doubt they realize it was far better being killed by them, and that by consuming humans, that man has been born anew and will come for them. As his body begins to spurt more blood and becomes deformed, he goes on to say if his master desires their blood and organs, then... but before he can finish, blood shoots out from every hole in his face and their entrails rupture from all of the ninjas' bodies. which is a bit of a surprise since it's easy to forget that One Punch Man is a seinen manga with lots of blood and gore, as opposed to a shonen one. The jokes and characters tend to lead you to believe it's less gory than it actually is. Sonic and Flash are stunned at the scene, and well damn, I've really been saying those words a lot recently. The organs and entrails all then start to coalesce into this disgusting meat orb in the air, which then compacts together and suddenly sucks itself into like a collapsing fleshy black hole.
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
This is actually disgusting if I'm honest. But we see the form of that man which was sucking in all that meat.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
He finishes his meal and now satisfied by the amount of meat in him,
Hold up.
he lands on the ground in front of Sonic and Flash. Now brimming with energy, he walks towards them and the chapter ends there with this awesome last panel of that man in all of his glory. And it's so good to finally have him properly revealed in the flesh. Pun not intended. I cannot wait to see him fight Sonic and Flash, and hopefully we get some more character development from Sonic as he explores releasing that pride he has. It seems to be set up really well, and I'm sure that they'll both get a moment before obviously Saitama comes swooping in to save the day. Getting into chapter 201 of One Punch Man called Genjutsu, it starts off back with the initial appearance of that man confronting Sonic and Flash after that weird, disgusting, gory entrance he made. As he approaches them, our heroes both exclaim that the person in front of them is in fact that man, and Sonic remembers he's the one they saw in the basement, and that he looks like a beast. Flash, however, is unimpressed, commenting that slurping the guts of his students is quite an entrance, then calling him by his name, Empty Void, while saying it totally fits his personality, and it's just plain revolting. That man then laughs, questioning how Flash knows his name, but also realizes he must have gotten in touch with Blast and asks him how Blast is doing. He then states he was just about to eat his guts up too and lets out a disgusting burp. Flash immediately jumps into action, slicing at Empty Void, who pirouettes away effortlessly. We then see the hollowed out remains of the ninja party on the ground, who then suddenly and miraculously return to normal. Sonic is immediately surprised, but whilst Flash is attacking, he reassures Sonic that Empty Void is a Genjutsu user. If he could really do what they just saw then there would be no reason to not kill them both in the same way. And the Genjutsu being a bit more of a Naruto thing, considering when you search it up, most of what comes up is Naruto stuff, but Genjutsu is basically an illusionary technique that warps the viewer's mind. However, it's not actually real like Empty Void's meat vortex. Sonic, realizing this, just stands there dumbfounded before jumping into action himself, shouting that he could see right through it and you can't fool Sonic with such silly tricks. Empty Void laughs again, stating that bluffs won't work and he's been watching both of their fighting styles. It's basically exactly as he expected, although different to the Heavenly Ninja Party who conforms to the village's way of fighting. He then opens his mouth extremely wide, revealing what looks like a universe inside his mouth, almost similar to Garo's face, which means that Empty Void 2 has some sort of cosmic power God bestowed upon him. And from his mouth, Empty Void pulls out a cube, stating, "You pass to one of our ninjas." Both Sonic and Flash recognize it instantly as the cube that was enshrined in the basement of the village. Empty Void then confirms that he was in fact talking about Flash when he said "you pass," calling Sonic insignificant, who rightly gets very angry. But before he can finish, Flash goes in for a super fast attack towards Empty Void. Flash demands Empty Void not to measure them by his disgusting standards, and he then thinks to himself that all of the village's members were robbed of their lives by that man, and thanks him for letting them settle this in a symbolic place such as this dumping ground. Flash then states that he sent Blast away and is going to instead make Empty Void spit out everything he knows about whatever is controlling him, before Empty Void gets forfeited and becomes part of the trash heap. They then start fighting again, fluidly trading blows in supersonic speed around the battlefield, and Sonic is in awe, commenting that this must be what happens when Flash is mad. The power is almost overwhelming. He continues to watch the fight take place above him, which is starting to look almost like the fight between Flash, Garo and Platinum S, but looks more like noodles than zigzags. Sonic continues to watch the fight, and Flash thinks to himself that since he excels at fights using just his senses, the Genjutsu trick wouldn't work on him. But before he can finish, Empty Void slides in asking Flash if he thinks that's gonna work, and laughs, before suddenly seeming to speed up so fast his face warps in different directions. And just like Saitama's death punch, Flash is now surrounded by similar looking fists, all labeled with the word death. Flash is immediately stopped in his tracks, sweating profusely as he jolts in fear. He quickly jumps back onto the ground, sliding away as fast as he can, breathing heavily and calling the attack impossible. He confirms that Empty Void's Genjutsu isn't just visual manipulation, but is in fact a psychic wave that finds the target's fear and amplifies it, which means that this death punch is actually Saitama's fist, and it just proves that Flash was extremely scared of it during their practice fight. Suddenly, several objects start raining from the sky and one lands in Flash's lap. He looks at it in horror, and it's revealed to be the head of Sonic, then slicing in half as more body parts rain down from the sky. Empty Void rushes in holding the cube, laughing at the fact that Flash can even make a face like he did at the sight of Sonic's head. He then pushes the cube directly in Flash's face, creating a giant blinding light. Sonic jumps towards them and calls for Flash, confirming that the scene that played out previously was in fact Genjutsu and not real. Empty Void, however, also uses the cube on Sonic, creating another flash of light, blasting Sonic away. Empty Void ponders over Sonic, thinking to himself that he accepted a monster cell, and that they all succumb to temptation when their inferiority complex is provoked. But I guess he doesn't realize that Sonic cooked it and never actually became a monster. The scene then switches to what looks like a grassy field as a younger version of Flash wakes up. He's dazed and confused, wondering where he is, but notices something in the distance, what looks like Sonic standing on a hill. He rushes towards him and Sonic says he's finally awake. He continues saying he's glad they deserted the village together and that Flash finally made it here, the place of dreams they swore to. Flash is in awe and remembers the area where they were going to rebuild the village. He's clearly glad, but whilst he admits to Sonic he seemed to be having a scary dream, it's revealed that this in fact is not Sonic, but an imposter, that of God and this entire fake vision. God posing as Sonic then continues to speak, saying any nightmare is better than the village, and starting now, they'll start a new ideal village right here. He reaches out his hand towards Flash, stating that they'll both do their best together, and Flash is happy at this sight, who also reaches out his hand. And the chapter ends there with the last panel of their hands just about to touch as the sun sets behind them. Now, will they touch? I mean, that remains to be seen, but hopefully someone or something comes in to stop them just at the right moment, or we're going to have another cosmic Garrow on our hands, and this time it's Flash. I do feel kind of sorry for Flash. All he wanted to do was stay with Sonic and rebuild the village into something that's better for everyone, and the vision and fake God also proves just how much Flash respects Sonic, and his ideal would be to stay with him and make a better world, which is just kind of cute really. Getting right into chapter 202 of One Punch Man called Partner, and it starts off with a slicing sound ringing through the battlefield. And we learn that it is in fact Sonic who has somehow come back from the cube's vision unscathed. And that slicing sound was him slicing into Empty Void's forearm, who has been left speechless at Sonic's sudden appearance. They both then drop to the floor and Flash gets up calling Sonic's name, who then boldly states that he told him so. Empty Void can't fool his eyes. But then, unfortunately, to kind of ruin the moment, we see Sonic's vision. I mean, it ends really well and has some great feels to it, but it kind of feels like a gag and flattens Sonic's great character moment here. This could have been done a lot better in my opinion. But in that dream, Sonic finds a monster cell, and at first he's tempted by it as it jumps onto a random pan on a stove and starts cooking itself. Searing and bubbling, other monster cells gather to put seasoning on it and wine into it. After it's finished cooking itself, it serves itself on a plate and begs Sonic to come eat it up. It continues to speak, telling Sonic he's been brushed off by Saitama, left in the dust by Flash, and humiliated by Empty Void. It asks if Sonic is okay with this and whether or not he is the strongest genius ninja. It beckons Sonic further by telling him to eat him and become stronger than them all. And Sonic picks up the knife, holding it above the cell and seeming like he's going to eat it. But instead he stabs it with his kunai that has a bomb attached to it, and it explodes while the monster cell cries out. See, it's okay, but it could have been so much better than a damn monster cell. It would have made so much more sense to be an actual vision of Saitama or something. Sonic then thinks to himself that while Saitama's strength is elusive to him, Flash is an ideal goal to target. If he can visualize it hard enough, then he can follow Flash. He states that he'll definitely surpass him with his own power and then tells Flash to get up quick. Flash concedes, telling Sonic he owes him one, and they both jump into action ready to fight Empty Void. They leap towards him, but Empty Void just laughs and disappears in front of them to reappear behind them while stating that their zest is fun and all, but their situation hasn't got any better. And just as he seems to strike them both down, suddenly Blast finally makes his second debut, appearing behind Empty Void in this awesome double page spread. Blast greets Empty Void sarcastically, saying he looks well, and Empty Void begins to speak Blast's name, but before he's even on the second letter, he's punched away with a gravity knuckle, and the chapter's over? I was honestly expecting a lot more than this, and it was getting really good with Blast's entrance, but it had to end right before the good stuff happens. I know Murata has a lot of projects going on, but he needs to follow Saitama's path and remove his limiter, or I'm going to continue only having one page worth of scripts to make my videos. But there is some good news over the horizon. One and Murata are actually planning on redrawing the past 7 chapters after he takes a little break. So from chapter 195 to 202, which is fantastic news because I have been quite disappointed with the recent chapters. It kind of feels like there's not enough love that was put into them. But we all know that when Murata does redraw chapters, they turn out incredible. I mean, just look at the first iteration of when Saitama was going to have a friendly chat with Garo, to the second iteration, which is... You can really feel the difference, so I have absolute faith in Murata and want to recreate a compelling Ninja Village arc, and I will be covering each of these chapters again as they come out, which is still as of yet unknown. It's now coming to the end of the video, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I'm so happy you stopped by. My channel is steadily growing and I'm amazed at the support I'm getting, and I also have a Patreon now, so feel free to support me however you like. The link will be in the description, and I will shout out names at the end of each video. Thank you again, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.